Here are the developing stories on Business Life tonight. Nigeria hints of not reopening its borders. The country's chief trade negotiator says action will be embarked upon when trust of member states is not gained over the issue of dumping. We have more on its effect on the impending Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Realistic. If our borders are not secure, then we have not just a trade problem, but we also have a national security problem.
Well, the president of Ghana Union of Traders Association is raising concerns over the decision by Nigeria. Also, government's plans to raise funds from the diaspora on course as bond is expected to be issued next year. We'll hear from the finance minister.
The bond would also be around there. Next year, we got clearance from Parliament to look at $3 billion and possibly another 2 if the market conditions are good.
The minister is not happy about the state of Ghana and the rest of Africa's coffee industry, indicating Africa gains only 2% of the global $100 million trade revenue from coffee.
By this arrangement, the fortunes of our hardworking producers are tied to a volatile market, underpinned by the economic conditions of those economies.
I'm Israeli, and I have the details of those stories coming your way in a bit. Let's bring your attention to new developments in the lead up to the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement area, because Nigeria is raising trust issues with member states partaking in this $3 trillion trade potential. The federal state's chief trade negotiator for the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFTA, Victor Liman, announced that despite Nigeria agreeing to ratify the agreement, their main borders will remain closed until Nigeria can ensure West African neighbors don't dump substandard goods into its market. Here you find on your screen a quote of what he told Arise Television.
Borders are not secure, then we have not just a trade problem, but we also have a national security problem. Every country needs to take steps to ensure that they put together a credible, secure border, put together a policy framework that ensures that people can trade freely across the border without any form of fear or encumbrance. I believe and I know that Nigeria is working round the clock to ensure that our borders are secure from smugglers. And so I think there is need for us to really sit together amongst ourselves, not just Nigeria, but also within the region. And of course at the continental level, and say, if you do not secure your border, and criminal elements or our markets are abused or exposed to infractions, then we would do this. We would do A, B, Z. We would place a sanction on you. So every stakeholder needs to take this on board to ensure that we need to have a secure border.
Well, African countries that may not have what it takes to begin trading under the Continental Free Trade Agreement in January 2021 will receive some support from the Secretariat. This is to ensure that no country is left behind in the world's largest trade deal after the creation of the World Trade Organization. Here's a report as the African Council of Ministers comments a week's preparatory meeting on the implementation of the agreement in Accra.
Series of meetings to prepare for commencement of trade is in line with the objectives of ensuring that all member countries put in place the necessary mechanisms to be able to trade from January 2021. Head of the AFCFTA affairs at the Ghana Revenue Authority, who is also chairing the Committee on Trading Goods and the Subcommittee on Trade Facilitation and Customs Operation, Feshin Akoto, told Joy Business that countries that will be ready by the January 2021 deadline will be given the necessary support.
When you look at the main framework agreement, there is a provision that we should have in mind that we are all not of the same level in development. Some of the countries are more developed than the others. So in dealing with such countries, we should be very considerate, looking at their level of development. So if any country is not ready, it is right for those developed ones to help them come out with the measures, help them put in place measures that will help them to implement the after. So once they come out with their difficulties, that's why we have a secretariat. The secretariats will take all the possible, will put in the possible measures to make sure that they have the basic things in place for trading to take place.
On the part of Ghana, Chief Director of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Patrick Nimo, told the delegate that regulatory bodies in the country have been given the necessary tools and are ready to play their role when implementation begins. He said Ghana is ready and prepared to begin trading under the Continental Free Trade Agreement,
which is supported by a steering committee and the technical working groups. We've also set up a national coordinating office to provide a one-stop facilitation location for the private sector to go to for information and assistance. Regulatory authorities are ready and feverishly preparing for processes for exports, imports, and transit trade. Economic operators are keen to take advantage of this opportunity, and when you engage with them, they are keen about the details.
The meeting is expected to conclude with a resolution on some pertinent trade barrier concerns among member nations.
The Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Chamber of Mines, Sulemana Kone, says the mining industry suffered some losses, thereby affecting the bottom lines of mining companies as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is in contrast with the assertions that the sector was not impacted, with emphasis on gold prices recording significant gains during the peak period of the outbreak. But according to Sulemana Kone, the temporary halting of explorating activities, for instance, led to the encroachment of some illegal miners. He recounted the losses during a media engagement ahead of the 6th edition of the Ghana Mining Industry Awards.
Very difficult situation for mining companies. Although they were allowed to continue to operate, they actually had to be running under very, very strict and tiring circumstances. But thank God, because of the discipline of mining companies, they were able to weather the storm. So I think we also want to look at even exploration companies as well, because we all know that exploration is the lifeblood of the mining industry. And because of COVID, most of the companies doing exploration couldn't run. They couldn't do their drilling and assaying as expected by the various programs they have, which they have presented to government. What it meant was that there was a field day for illegal miners. They actually encroached their concessions, which was quite unfortunate. But these were the realities on the ground. Again, when it came to the supply chain, there were challenges around even freight. The cost of freight went up because we all know what it is. China, which was the epicenter of the pandemic, actually shut down. And we all know that the global manufacturing base we all know is China, and that was the epicenter of the pandemic. So effectively what it meant was that you had a situation where you couldn't get your supplies on time. But then again, the companies also worked their usual magic. How do they work with other members of the industry to ensure that they could, for example, even share some inputs. So if you don't have stock, can you call on another company which may have some of this stock which you don't unfortunately have, so that you can continue to run your operations. It just tells you that having a coordinating body like the Chamber of Mines really helps even with the operations of the Chamber and its member companies as well. Because I remember in the early days, you had the supply managers of the Ghana Chamber of Mines engaging, having conversations regarding what they can do among themselves to actually ride the storm, at least in the short term. So this we were also able to work just to ensure that we're able to ride over the storm.
Mr. Ken Oforiatta says the idea to raise funds from the diaspora for the development of the country is on course. According to him, the move is part of government's plans for next year. He explains that raising such funds facilitates government's capital expenditure investments that seek to accelerate economic growth. He disclosed this Joy Business after addressing the first Diaspora Business Breakfast meeting organized by the Ghana Investment Promotion Center here in Accra. More in the following report.
Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta spoke to Joy Business after addressing the first Diaspora Business Breakfast meeting in Accra. The meeting, organized by the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, was aimed at engaging Ghanaian returnees and other nationals hoping to establish their business presence in the country. The minister is confident that raising funds from the diaspora through bonds is part of government's plan for next year.
What this is going to call for, we have looked at various ways of trying to do this bond. There have been various experiences in Nigeria and in Kenya, and it has been sort of underwhelming in terms of the amount of resources we're able to mobilize, though India and Israel have done very well. So it sounds to us that we need to be a little bit more innovative than we have been before. And when we look at, let's say, the African Americans in the States, and you look at what is happening now with regards to retirement pensions, this is a period for them in which the largest number of African Americans are getting federal pensions. And so the question for us, if we assume some 2 million of them retiring, an average of about $30 million, $30,000 per person, you begin to see almost 60 billion that are resources that could come to the continent.
Chief Executive of the GIPC, Yofi Grant, hinted that the ongoing work on the draft diaspora policy will promote a serene business environment for multinationals operating in the country.
We are in the process of formulating the diaspora policy, the diaspora policy, and it includes quite a number of things. But we are also taking examples from globally. There are many examples: Israel, China, even the United States itself, Philippines, Indonesia. There are many countries that offer different propositions, and we want to get the best of both worlds. But at the end of the day, it must be mutually beneficial. It must be culturally beneficial, and it must be transformational for us. It's an engagement that, and if you look at history, and I said it earlier on, there's no country that has developed as an island.
The meeting, under the theme Creating Connections, Building Ghana Together, is the first of such platforms by the GIPC to engage the diasporan community on business opportunities in the country. Ebenezer Sabotage report for Joy Business.
The Minister of Agriculture and Chairman of the Inter-African Coffee Organization, Dr. Usu Afriakoto, has called for a policy change in the African coffee industry. Ghana, just like other African countries, are raking in a pittance from the coffee value chain despite the existence of a huge global market. Even though Africa is the largest coffee producer, the continent earned only 2% of the $100 million accruing to the global coffee trade. Addressing the virtual 60th annual general meeting of the IACO, he lamented the trade deficit of exporting 90% raw coffee to the global market while importing $700 million worth of coffee products onto the continent annually.
The significance of this meeting to the African coffee industry remains undiminished. Ghana is therefore pleased to host this important meeting with the participation of all of the critical stakeholders in the African coffee industry. The Ghanaian coffee industry, like many others in Africa, is undergoing a revolution underlined by the desire to transition from colonial legacy to African autonomy. Coffee was one of the major cash crops promoted by colonial masters. Hence, post-independence, the major market for coffee and its cousins, cocoa and tea, remain outside the continent. African producers have continued to target Europe and North America as a key market for export of coffee beans. By this arrangement, the fortunes of our hardworking producers are tied to a volatile market, underpinned by the economic conditions of those economies. One of the valuable lessons from this pandemic is the domestication of critical commodity value chains. Increasing continental consumption and raising the level of domestic value addition of these commodities is long overdue. The slow pace of industrialization is not matching up to the needs of the young and vibrant African population. This situation has resulted in huge imports of finished products from other parts of the world. The African market is rightly sending signals for the necessary investments in value addition of cash crops, particularly coffee. The continent's population nearly trebled from its projected 1.5 billion. Rapid urbanization is taking place across Africa. Currently, the urban population is estimated at 40% compared to 27% only in 1980. By 2050, that's 50 years hence, Africa will be majority urban, with nearly 56% of its population living in urban areas.
Well, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture is spearheading an initiative with the Netherlands government to support the implementation of Ghana's food security policies. Officials say the move will focus on strengthening the various agric colleges' institutional performance and equip them. Human Resource Director at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, Lawete Tete, says the success of the program will empower the sector's training institutions to generate internal funds as well. He said this when the Netherlands Initiative for Capacity Building in Higher Education, NICE, made a presentation to the 4 agriculture training colleges in Ghana. Prince Apia has more in the following report.
One common challenge often faced by educational institutions in Ghana is the available equipment for practical demonstrations. It is even more critical in training colleges in the country. The Kwadaso Agricultural Training College, for instance, is one such institution. Reverend Benjamin Asante Mensah is the principal.
The students go to the classroom, to lecture room, they learn a whole lot of theoretical facts, but then having hands-on experience that will enable them to confidently practice on the field is something that is lacking. This gesture will beef up our training program, will really enhance our capacity.
He said this when the Netherlands Initiative for Capacity Building in Higher Education donated tractors, plows, harrows and planters to the Kwadaso Agriculture Training College and 3 others. The project seeks to support the further implementation of the Ghanaian food security policies and plans by strengthening the colleges in their overall institution and organizational performance. Reverend Asante Mensah says the gesture is timely.
Every year we plant a number of acres, sometimes 8 acres of maize. We have about 2 acres of vegetables and fruits. And once we have these machines, plowing will be easier, land preparation will be easier. And once they are, that's the starting point. So once the land is prepared very, very well with these machines, it will definitely increase our IGF. And we will also definitely be able to use them to generate some income for the college, use it to expose our staff even to these machines and to also help.
These training colleges also cultivate their school lands for small-scale commercializations. Human Resource Manager at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, Lawete Tete, says the move will also enhance the internally generated funds of the institution.
We have 4 agricultural colleges benefiting now. These are Ohawu Agricultural College in the Volta region, Kwadaso Agricultural College here, Ejura Agricultural College, and then Damango Agricultural College. As the schools are expanding, government cannot support them in everything, so they must also think of generating additional revenue to support whatever effort government is making. It is going to provide a greater exposure to the students. They can do much more practice in all the areas of agriculture.
Meanwhile, it is also expected to create an entrepreneurial awareness and knowledge among staff and students in their education and research. Prince Apia reporting.
With rice consumption outstripping domestic production, government with support from AGRA has put in place a series of measures to revolutionize the sector and ease imports of the commodity as well as boost exports. This focus on boosting production has already paid off, with Ghana currently producing about 55% of its rice consumption in less than 4 years. There's more in the following report by Anan Sabit.
Rice has become the most important food staple after maize in Ghana, and its consumption keeps increasing as a result of population growth, urbanization, and change in consumer habits. With a higher consumption, the country largely depends on importation to make up the deficit in rice supply. However, in recent years, with the right structures in place for continuous progress of the government's Planting for Food and Jobs program, coupled with access to modern farming technology by the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, AGRA, and other governmental support, Ghana is currently gravitating towards self-sufficiency in both maize and rice production. Foster Kwame Boateng is the West African Regional Head of AGRA.
AGRA has helped Crop Research Institute, Scientific for Industrial Research, both SARI and CRI, to develop varieties, maize varieties, soya varieties, rice varieties, and then cassava varieties that provide about double or 3 times what farmers get using their local varieties. Farmers used to get about, let's say, 1 metric ton per hectare on their fields. Now farmers are registering between 2.5 and 3.5 metric tons, almost 3 times. That is what we've been able to achieve.
These interventions has contributed immensely in increasing rice production in Ghana from 25% to 55%.
Before this government came, total production for maize in Ghana was about 1.8 million metric tons. That was as far back as 2017. Now we are talking about 3.50 million metric tons. It means we are almost doubled our production. And then it means Ghana is gravitating towards self-sufficiency in maize production. I'll bring you to rice. Even before this government came, we realized that we were producing almost 25% of our rice, importing 75% of that. And even if you look at the import bill alone, at that time it's between $650 million to almost about $1 billion. Now, as I speak, we are able to produce 55% of the rice we consume. It means that there's a big saving of 35% are not being imported. So when you compute on that, you are talking about making a savings of about $400 million. This is what we are talking about.
Currently, there is a consortium in place working to improve local rice consumption and reduce further its importation. Nana Ama Opondia is the policy advisor at the J. Kufuor Foundation.
We work as a consortium, and members of the consortium are the Ministry of Food and Agri, Hopeline, Interval, the JoyNews Foundation, and we have 2 seed producers, Sparks and Volta City, and each of the consortium.
Watching Business Live, we're taking a break. We'll be back in a bit. Stay tuned in. A virtual private network will soon be available to link all the newly established business resource centers and key stakeholders across Ghana. The VPN, which is expected to speed up the operations of staff of the resource centers, will enable smooth sending and receiving of data over a secured network without physical presence in order to reduce the delays in the system. This was announced at a 3-day startup review workshop for the staff of BRCs, as well as identified stakeholder regulatory institutions at Sunyani in the Bno region. Nesta Kafuya Juma filed the following report.
The business resource centers were established under the Rural Enterprises Program of the Ministry of Trade and Industry with funding from the African Development Bank and International Fund for Agricultural Development Fund. The centers are to provide a one-stop enterprise support services to deliver a broad range of business development services to potential and existing enterprises and entrepreneurs. They will further operate as financial and investments facilitation hub and business information repositories for micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. Minister of Trade and Industry Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen, who joined the meeting virtually, said the introduction and establishment of the business resource centers shows government's commitment towards the development of micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises.
It's a major government intervention which is part of our industrial development and transformation activity. It is designed to develop an ecosystem that will support the development and growth of micro, small, and medium enterprises. It is against this background that we took this bold step to put in place this DRC infrastructure. And we've done so in a way that allows us to benchmark their performance with similar institutions globally.
National Director of Rural Enterprises Program, Kwesi Atayenchi, said since its inauguration in August 2020, this is the first time staff in all the 37 offices of the Business Resource Center have been brought together with all other stakeholders for such a workshop. He stressed the 3-day training will give a strategic guidance, clearly defined targets, as well as monitoring framework for supervising institutions, among other things.
This workshop is therefore planned to have a one-stop point for all BRCs to meet, share experiences across board with our minister sitting in the chair and leading the discussions, and also offering us very useful advice to urge us on.
And that'll be it for Business Live. I'm Israel Aye. JoyNews Prime. Join me for JoyNews Prime at 7 p.m. Good evening.